Hi there, guys. So today we're going to talk about bullying. Bullying is a big issue, and can be a trigger for mental health, and it is probably one of the main triggers for my own mental health issues. So I was bullied through most of my childhood, um, unfortunately by the people that I used to hang around with that I would call my friends. Primary school, I didn't have that many friends. I was the weird kid. I kind of stood out because of the fact that I wasn't that into sports. I was into games, but I wasn't into games enough to be geeky enough to fit in with that group. So I was always the outsider. And the thing with bullying is it's not always physical. Some of it was. Um, so the kids used to hit me, but they always made me hit me in places that wouldn't show any bruises or wouldn't show up to anyone that would suspect anything. And the bullying in primary school, I was called gay for most of primary school because of how close I was with my best friend. And he got some of it, but because he was sporty, because he fit in, um, he didn't get it as much as I did. I was name called, made to feel like being different was bad. I was called gay like it was a bad thing as well. They used derogatory terms for homosexuality, which I won't use right now. One incident I do remember where I was playing marbles in my classroom with my friend because marbles was a thing back then, and we used to collect them. And then one of them proceeded to kneel on my back when I was going underneath the table to get one of my marbles out, and would not get off even when I collapsed because I was on my knees and he kneeled and I collapsed onto the floor. Um, and he proceeded to just carry on kneeling on me until I couldn't breathe, basically. He was a piece of shit. And the bullying back then was more about making me feel isolated and making me feel different to everyone else. Secondary school discontinued, but it was different people, obviously going to a new school, mixing with different groups. I thought I'd found new friends, but they proceeded to continue to bully me, name call me, physically abuse me. And there was a couple of times when I chose to stand up for myself, and I would proceed to. I wasn't exactly the strongest kid. I wasn't a muscly kid. I was a little overweight, which was a huge thing for these bullies. As again, it was to make me feel small, make me feel insecure. One time when I stood up for myself, I grabbed one of the bullies and was telling him to leave me alone. And he decided to grab my badge straps and bang me against the edge of a windowsill, which cracked my head open. I saw red and went for him, but didn't realise that blood was actually pouring down my neck at that time. Another incident when I tried to stand up for myself, I charged one of my bullies and he grabbed me by my bag, swung me around and threw me headfirst into a door. School was not a good time for me. My parents didn't know anything that was going on, and that was half the problem. It wasn't their fault. It was because one, my school didn't react in the way that they should have, and two, I didn't talk about it. I didn't feel like it could. With your parents, you don't want to let them down. You don't want to make them think they've they've got a weak kid or whatever, which was wrong with me. I mean, my parents were there to love and care for me, and that's exactly what they would have done if I had spoken about it. But the amount of times that I heard boys will be boys, they're just taking the mick, they're having a laugh, you need to have thicker skin, those sort of things, you don't realise how damaging they are. It's like, not that it's on the same scale, but with a rape victim, there's victim blaming. As soon as you start to say those things, they need to have thicker skin, and as soon as you start to say things like boys will be boys, they're just having a laugh, that's victim blaming. You're making the victim feel like it's their fault that they're getting bullied. And it was because I was a smaller kid, I was a weaker kid, I was the overweight kid. And I wasn't hugely overweight. I mean, alcohol did that later on. I was a chubby kid. A quiet kid, a shy kid, someone that wouldn't stand up for themselves. And that was what made me a target. And also the fact that I was different. Those phrases can't be used anymore. They're just so damaging. And it can trigger things to go on in daily life as well. And when I started work, it was like a new era for me. It was a chance to start again, sort of thing. Also, an incident that happened when I was at school was that it was when I was in secondary school. So my best friend at the time, and I don't blame him at all for what he did, but during secondary school he would join in with the picking on me and the name calling. I think for him it was like a defence. It was a way to protect himself and keep himself out of the line of fire, and I don't blame him at all. But one time when they locked me in a classroom and I was quite claustrophobic and panicked and tried to get out and they wouldn't let me out. He was egging them on, he was involved. But when I charged out of that classroom, I grabbed the first person I saw. And it happened to my best friend at the time. And I proceeded to start punching him. During the fight, as the crowd forms, as it always does, his head got pushed down and I ended up punching him in the face. And I gave him a black eye. The people that had bullied me, the other classmates, had seen it as a good thing, had seen it, oh, it's a fight, oh, he's punched him in the face, oh, he's giving him a black eye, go on, Jack. I never felt more guilty. He was okay, he didn't help things, but he didn't deserve that. And they got him tarred as a bully as well, because I had to tell the teachers that he was a bully. But he wasn't the worst of them. As I say, I can only understand what I can understand, and I think that the way he was defending himself, was stopping himself being the target that I was. I mean, we've moved on since then. I mean, we're still friends now to this day, but I'm not friends with the rest of them. I can't be. For my own mental health, for my own brain. And anyway, so going into work. For 6 years, I loved my job. Everything was fine. Everything was happy. And then I moved to a new branch. I mean, I'd worked at many, many branches at this point. But I moved and worked at a branch in the city, which I won't name. And we'll call him Manager K. He had a very little man complex. And he liked everybody to fall in line with him. He was your manager, he was your boss. If you didn't do what he wanted, even if you thought it was wrong, you were targeted for that. He proceeded to make me feel like an outsider because I did the right thing and not always what he wanted. He wanted you to work extra hours. He wanted you to work day and night. He wanted you to be at his beck and call. And I wasn't going to do that. I'd been in the company 6 years. I'd bought my own confidence. And he had this assistant manager, we'll call him Manager C, who kind of just fell in line with him and let him do whatever he wanted. And that's kind of where my downfall began, because I started drinking excessively. I started cutting myself. And I had my first bout of suicidal thoughts. I used to stand on the platform and try and cross a tube station every day, thinking if I just jumped in front, this would all end and I wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. I got myself to a point where I didn't care about anything anymore, not even my own job, which I had loved before joining this place. And one day, I came in after a particularly heavy night out. Checked with my colleagues to make sure I didn't smell of alcohol and started serving. I'd worked with my manager C, prior to that. Manager K got involved after and proceeded to say that he wanted to send me home, which sent me into a panic attack. Because I thought I'd done something wrong. An example of his aggression and his anger was one time when we were off base and we were doing a client meeting elsewhere and we needed to book client appointments. And instead of, I tried to use my initiative because all the diaries for the area were closed down or booked up. So I decided to open up my own diary, book these clients in so that we would get the business using my initiative, and then gave my manager a call to give him the heads up. He proceeded to then shout at me on the phone, "Who the F do you think you are? Who do you work for?" I said HSBC. He said, "No, you work for me. Close down this diary now. And cancel all of those appointments." He made me feel a little. He talked to me like I was a piece of rubbish. My behaviour got so reckless because I wouldn't talk to anyone either. Again, it was just how I dealt with things then, and it was the wrong way of dealing with things. I kept it all bottled up, and that's when the self-harm started. And I began to do reckless behaviour at work that actually, and I'm not going to talk about, but actually got me in trouble and got me into a disciplinary, and that's when I finally had to speak out because I was about to lose my job. I told my area director at the time that he was bullying me. Nothing happened. They promised me I wouldn't go back to that branch because that was when I had my breakdown and I was off for 4 months. They promised me I wouldn't go back to that branch, but that's the only thing that happened. And I wasn't the only one that put in a bullying complaint against him. But nothing happened to him. In fact, he's still with the company. Yeah. So bullying is something that happens, but it shouldn't, and you should never feel embarrassed to talk about it. And I wish I could go back then and talk about what was going on at that branch, what was going on at school, because maybe I wouldn't have had to go through as much as I have just because I didn't speak up. Speaking up doesn't mean that you're weak. Actually, it takes a huge amount of courage to talk about these sort of things. At the time, to talk up and tell people what you're feeling, tell people what's happening. These things happen all across the country all the time. You're not alone. Companies have procedures to deal with these things. But unfortunately, when you're going through depression and anxiety and mental health, your brain will find ways to deal with this if you don't. And that includes doing reckless things, turning to vices. But that's totally the wrong way of dealing with it. And I'm not going to talk about everything that happened through my childhood. That's for a therapist, and my work life. That's from a therapist. But these were the main thing. These were the main points. I mean, I'm 30 years old now. I can process these things now, but I should never have had to. So if you're being bullied at work, at school, wherever, talk about it. I can't even imagine what it's like these days with social media. I mean, the worst that I got, I mean, I never found out actually who did it, but it was an incident that happened when I was in secondary school. Someone created a fake Bebo account. Bebo was like Facebook in my day. And I had basically gone round putting a comment on the strongest guys in my year Facebook pages, cussing off their mums, cussing off them, making them angry. I went into school the next day not knowing anything about it. All I knew was one of the guys was looking for me. He then proceeded to continuously punch me in the chest. It was only because the sixth former stepped in and stopped it. I'll be thankful to him to this day, because I don't know what that guy would have done to me if he hadn't stepped in and I managed to get to class. And that's when I found out what was going on. I managed to reach out to the strongest guys over my own Bebo, to make it clear that this wasn't me that was doing this. But I mean, what my point is, the social media is so rife nowadays. I can't imagine that what the type of bullying that they do nowadays, because of the way that social media is, because of the way that the world's built digitally now, it doesn't stop at the schoolyard. With me, at least, I got to go home. At least I got to shut that off. I got to process that. It doesn't end there now. And it's impossible for parents, because how are they supposed to police everything? Just keep an eye on your kids' behaviours. Keep an eye on if they're acting quite recluse. I mean, my parents had no idea because I was so good at hiding it. But the teachers in the schools can only do so much in their powers as well. But they need to be given more powers to do that. Bullying's never going to be something that we're going to be able to stop completely, but it's a huge factor in young people's mental health. And I don't pretend to be any sort of expert. I'm just someone that has experience with it all. But yeah. So that's my story. And I hope me talking about this helps someone. Certainly can't do any harm, I guess. Anyway, thank you for listening. And I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great mental health day.